The court reporter is Lisa Babcock. My name is Jeff Babcock. I'm the videographer. We're here on behalf of For the Record Reporting. Would counsel for the parties please introduce themselves, starting with the State Attorney's Office, and the court reporter will swear in the witness.
Emma Hershey, certified legal intern for the state.
Siobhan McCants, Assistant State Attorney.
Desiree Goodfellow for the defense.
John A. Toppman, Assistant Public Defender.
And for the record, the defendant, Mr. Riley, is present today.
And you're going to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Are we good to begin?
Yep.
Cool. Could you please introduce yourself for the record and spell your last name?
I'm Officer Kiersten Oliver, Oliver.
Officer Oliver, what's your current position?
I'm a police officer at the Tallahassee Police Department
How long have you been with the Tallahassee Police Department?
since 2020.
Now, I kind of want to talk about how you got into that position. What type of training did you receive to become an officer?
I did basic recruit training at the Pat Thomas Law Enforcement Academy.
Does the academy include any specific training as it relates to investigations?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We do basic investigations as well as DUI investigation training.
What kind of training do you receive for DUIs?
Basic DUI refreshers and basic DUI training.
When we talk about basic training for DUIs, does that include things such as looking for signs of impairment?
Yes.
Now, once you completed the academy, you said that you started working in 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
So now I want to transition into your involvement in this case. Do you recall if you were on duty on May 7th of 2024?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And specifically directing your attention to around 2 a.m. What were you doing at that time?
I was on a different traffic stop.
Can you tell us what specifically was going on during that traffic stop?
When I was on that traffic stop, I was back up for Officer Muth, and I observed a vehicle at a high rate of speed with no headlights on pass by me.
And just to clarify, so you're on a separate traffic stop, and as you're attending to that traffic stop, you notice an additional vehicle driving down the road.
Correct.
And can you tell us what specifically stood out to you about that vehicle driving down the road?
The high rate of speed and no headlights were visible.
What did that car look like?
It was a white sedan.
Once you see this vehicle driving with a high rate of speed and no headlights on, what's your initial reaction?
I made sure that Officer Muth was safe, and I got inside my marked patrol vehicle and went to initiate a stop on the vehicle that passed by me.
How long did it take for you to catch up to that vehicle?
Longer than average, but a few seconds.
Did you have to speed to catch up?
Yes.
Now, after you're speeding on the road, do you ever activate your emergency lights?
Yes.
Can you describe to us how that vehicle is driving at that point once your lights are activated?
It slows down, but it continues for a couple of blocks, and then it pulls over into a left turn lane.
And while it's slowing down and as it's driving through, did you notice anything in terms of driving patterns such as swerving?
Yes.
Can you tell us about what you observed?
Yes. So the vehicle was hovering lines on the right side of the road and the left side of the road, was engaging in the other lane that instead of the proper lane that he was in originally, or the vehicle was in originally, and then pulled over into the left side lane.
You stated that he was engaging with another lane as he was driving down the road. When he was breaching or moving towards that secondary lane, were there any other vehicles that could have been impacted?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
There was another vehicle in the lane, in the right lane, if you will, while we were in the left lane.
And just to clarify, are you saying that the vehicle that you were pursuing was swerving?
Objection leading.
I'm going to ask the question again, it's noted for the record. But just to clarify, are you saying that as the vehicle is swerving, that there's another vehicle that it almost went into?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So after you stopped the vehicle, where were you, what county were you located in when you stopped this vehicle?
Leon County.
And where was the vehicle located in the roadway when you stopped it?
It was located in the left-hand turn lane.
Okay. I want to transition a few minutes forward. So you stop the vehicle. Do you attempt to make contact with the driver of that vehicle at that point?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell us, as you're walking up to the vehicle, can you tell us what type of vehicle it is up close?
It's a white sedan, and as I get closer, I realize it's a Mercedes.
Were you able to determine who is driving this vehicle?
Yes,
And who was that?
that was the defendant,
And what was his name?
Mr. Calvin Riley.
Do you see the driver of that vehicle in this room here today?
I do.
Can you please identify him by article of clothing?
A black long-sleeve T-shirt.
And let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant as the driver of the vehicle. Officer Oliver, do you see any other occupants in the vehicle as you're making contact with the defendant?
No, ma'am.
During this interaction, did you have a body-worn camera on?
I did.
Okay, can you tell us whether or not that body-worn camera was activated during your interaction?
It was.
Would you recognize a copy of that if you were to be shown it here today?
Yes.
Okay. Let the record reflect that I'm showing both opposing counsel and the witness what has been pre-marked as State's Exhibit 1 for identification purposes. Officer Oliver, can you tell us what I've just handed you?
It's a copy of my body-worn camera from the traffic stop.
And just to clarify, did you have an opportunity to review the video footage on this disc?
Yes.
Okay. And the video footage on this disc, is that the same video from when you were interacting with the defendant on May 7th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
Okay. The state moves to enter what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit 1 into evidence.
No objection. It's the same one from the previous hearing, correct?
Correct. Okay. Officer, I want to pause now for a moment and just talk a little bit about what your training was when you were an officer, or when you were going through the academy. Could you tell us what kind of symptoms you're trained to look for in a suspect when it comes to looking for signs of impairment for their face?
Yes. So for the face, it would be sweating.
Objection. Not DRE. She can't testify to this.
For the record, response to the objection is that this is within her personal knowledge. It does not require any scientific knowledge. Rather, it's just based on lay observations and opinions under Rule 701, which would be qualified based on her training and experience rather than anything scientific in nature. Therefore, she would be allowed to answer.
It would be sweating in the face, glossy eyes, bloodshot eyes, and possible odor from the mouth.
Okay. Now, when you make contact with the defendant, when you approach him, what's the first thing you notice about his face or his appearance?
I noticed that his eyes were glossy.
So as you're talking to him, you see that his eyes are glossy. Do you ask at any point to see any identification from him?
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about what his behavior was like as he was searching for his identification?
Yes. So I asked for his registration, proof of insurance, and driver's license. And while he was searching for any of those documents, it was fumbling. He looked in his center console, did not pull anything out, just stared into it. He pulled his visor down, and papers were dropping, and he was trying to grab the papers out of the visor. He just seemed confused.
During that interaction, did he ever make eye contact with you?
Yes.
Okay. And also, additionally, as he's fumbling with these documents, searching for things, was he ever able to produce an ID for you?
No.
What was he able to produce?
A piece of paper with his name on it.
Did he tell you anything else about himself?
He gave me his name and date of birth.
Okay. So while you're speaking to the defendant, trying to get this information, can you tell us, what does the car smell like in that moment?
I believed at the time it possibly smelled like alcohol.
Were you 100% certain at that point?
No.
Okay. Now I want to pause again. During the academy, did you ever receive any training to look for speech patterns?
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about what the defendant's speech was like that night?
Objection relevant.
For the record, this is under Rule 401, this would be relevant because it goes to whether or not the defendant was impaired that night. Whether the defendant was slurring his words would directly go to whether or not his normal faculties were impaired. Therefore, it would be relevant, and it makes the material fact more or less likely.
So his speech was slurred.
Okay, so as you're hearing the defendant talk with slurred speech, does he ever mention anything to you about the headlights on his vehicle not being on?
He asked why I slowed him down, and I advised to him that he was traveling at a high rate of speed and that his headlights were off. And he asked me, "Am I sure?" And I said yes.
And what was your reaction, or what, if anything, did you have to do to show him that these lights were in fact off?
I pointed his direction to the light switch that controls the headlights in the vehicle. I told him his parking lights were on, and then I turned it over again, and then the lights for the headlights appeared.
Is that the first time you saw the headlights on his vehicle?
No. Or can you rephrase that question?
Is that the first time his headlights on the vehicle were turned on in your entire involvement in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So after turning on the lights, at any point during your initial conversation with the defendant, did he indicate where he was coming from?
Yes.
Where did he say?
He said 429 West Brevard Street.
Were you able to determine who lived at that residence?
He did.
And did he mention anything about his brother?
Yes, he did. He said that his brother lived there.
And were you able to confirm were you able to confirm whether that was, or his brother also lived there?
No.
Okay. So I want to transition. It's late at night. The defendant's slurring his words. He's unable to produce an ID. At that point, did you ever try to attempt to verify his identity?
Yes.
Okay. Can you walk us through how you verified that?
Yes, so once he gave me his information and the piece of paper with his name on it, I went back to my patrol vehicle and looked into law enforcement resources, and I was able to confirm his identity with the information that he gave me.
And what, if anything, did you learn when you were verifying his identity?
I learned that his license was suspended.
Now, before today's trial, did you have an opportunity to review the defendant's certified driving record?
Yes.
Okay. For the record,
Objection was never put on the answer to discovery.
The answer to discovery was filed yesterday, and it was sent to you as well yesterday.
Without proper notice.
It's also important to note, for record purposes, this is the first time that the state received this yesterday from the DMV. They provided it to the state yesterday. We requested it back in early February. Additionally, an answer to discovery was in fact filed. We made sure that this was sent to the defense yesterday afternoon via the portal. In addition to that, this is a public record that the defense absolutely had access to, and they could have requested on their own in addition to that. However, the state has provided it, therefore it would be admissible in today's trial.
We will be asking for a Richardson hearing. For the record, it's a state agency. You've been in possession of it for the entirety of its existence.
This is not a law enforcement agency, therefore it wouldn't be assumed to be possession of the state. Only law enforcement agency documents are assumed to be in possession of the state. Therefore, the state is going to proceed with questioning, and we can make an official ruling after the fact with the court.